So boundaries are about knowing the difference between this is mine, this belongs to me, this is in my realm of control, and this is not mine, this does not belong to me. So boundaries are just about knowing where that edge is between me and not me, which means boundaries are a way to know me.
Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Together, we'll explore practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Making small changes is possible and can lead to big results. Are you ready? Let's go do this. Well, welcome, Jen. Welcome to the podcast, by the way.
Thank you, officially.
So you are an emotional resilience coach, you're an author, and someone who knows firsthand what it's like to be stuck in the shadows. I pulled that off your website, and I thought that was a very interesting way to describe how life has gone for you. And also, I want to dive into your book, How to Set Boundaries Without Feeling Like a Dick. That's an awesome title, by the way.
Thank you.
But first, I wanted to give you an opportunity to share some of who you are with my listeners.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me. And I know we're here to talk about like my book, but I got to say, we never got to this off camera, but I read your book too.
Oh, thank
And
you.
you've been on quite the journey. You definitely know what the shadows are.
Yes, I do.
Yes, yes. And finding your way into the light. And it was an honor to read your story. Thank you so much for sharing that
You're
and
welcome.
for the work that you've done to find your way out into the light. It's an important gift to give the world that we don't think about when we're in the process of it. So it's
Mm,
really cool.
well
Like,
said.
but yeah, so my name is Jenn Febel, and I am an emotional resiliency coach. My whole job, really, my mission is to help people bridge the gap between their head and their heart. And I do that in a number of different ways. I do that through my private practice. I do that through my Soulful Radiance retreats, which I hold twice a year. I do that through my 8-day life mastery program. And I do that through this book. And this book has been such a fun experience. Man, if you want to like learn more about yourself, write a book.
Yeah, I second that.
Right, yeah, nothing will bring you face to face and hold you accountable in so many new ways.
True.
And so my whole thing is to help people find the tools they need to start to show up in a way that isn't just the talk of authenticity but feels good. And that's kind of how the book was born, how to start to use our voice not to appease others, not to protect ourselves, but to create a bridge to other people so that we can empower them and ourselves. And that's kind of everything I do in all my different programs and this book.
I really enjoyed reading your book. I got a physical copy a couple weeks ago and I started to dive into it and I found myself not being able to put it down. But the one thing that I really appreciated about your book is that at the end of every chapter, there was practical application and not just wishy-washy, like a little question here, there, practical application. There was thought-provoking application and there was also step-by-step process that you didn't just say, "Hey, go do this," but you outlined how to go and accomplish that. And we were talking off camera before we started. I only had a short amount of time to read your book, and I'm absolutely going to go back into each of those chapters and put the time into what was there because I found myself at every page being able to relate. It's like, yes, I related to that, or I was able to just pull something else out of it. And I want to talk about how all this kind of came about because when we talked before, you had a fear. You had a fear of bugs, and your journey started with hypnotherapy. And so I want you to share your story to encourage others out there that have fears and how they can see hope in your story
Sure,
and encourage
absolutely.
them.
Absolutely. So my story, I mean, I struggled from a very young age. I think I first saw my first psychologist at the age of 7.
Mm,
I was already starting to show symptoms of anxiety by the age of 5. So it was a long time brewing, but it was when I was 19 that things really came to a head. That's when, graduating high school, you got to go off into the world and be an adult and know what you want and know who you are and know how to make decisions about the rest of your life, which is all wrong, but that's the pressure that we're taught. And so it all kind of came to a head, and I was diagnosed with 7 different mental health diagnoses. So I was in and out of hospital. I was diagnosed with anorexia and bulimia. I'd swing between the two: generalized anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, depressive disorder. I think I missed that one.
mm.
Suicidal ideation and self harm, which means there are scars on my body that I put there. And I went to doctor after doctor. I was always looking for something, and they would always be like, "Well, it's all in your head." I'm like, "Okay." that's still attached to me. So,
What do we
like,
do with that? I
great, we
think
know
I
where it is.
yeah, yeah, and there's a lot of us walking around, it's like, "Oh, it's all in your head." It's easier said than done, so what I find fascinating about your journey is that, hey, you didn't just take that as, "Yeah, it's all in my head, let's take this to the next level." So, sorry.
Well, I was desperate, right?
Yeah,
Like
right.
I didn't want to not be here, but I couldn't figure out how to want to be here.
Mhm. I know
And
the
so I
feeling.
was right, so I was just constantly trying to find some glimmer of hope, and I didn't find it in traditional. I had some good therapists over the years, but it the way I always thought about it is it stopped me from driving off the cliff of life. But so then I'm now in a stopped car that's no longer driving off the cliff, but now I'm just looking at the cliff
Mhm. Yeah.
that I wanted to drive off of. And so learning to do a 3-point turn, learning to turn away started with the bug phobia. So I had been given a 12% statistical chance of ever recovering from anything. I was told that I
Wow.
wouldn't recover from anything. I would not ever be able to live without medications. I've now been medication free. I've lost count. I think it's 11 or 12 years, might be 13. I don't know. I've lost count, which I think is cool. And so I don't want to go back and look because I'm like, that's fine. It's enough ago that my brain's okay with it. And it started to all kind of culminate in this generalized anxiety that started to come out as phobias. And so for the little phobias, I had the obsessive compulsive techniques and the tapping and counting and things like that. But eventually it started to kind of spread out. And because I'd been told I was never going to get better, I gave up on looking for answers. I
Mm.
started to look for, how do I now live with this? And that's kind of what happens. They're like, this is what you have. Your job is to learn how to live with it. And so I just started gathering tools to learn how to live with this thing that I didn't want to have to live with. And as everything kind of piled up, that's when the phobia of bugs and insects became a thing. And it sounds dumb. Like it does, there's a fruit of bugs. Like it doesn't sound that big of a deal, but I was actually just speaking with someone and they live in Pennsylvania where I visited, and in the summertime, you can open your windows in the summertime at night and get a nice cool breeze and maybe one or two mosquitoes. That's not what it's like in where so I'm just north of Toronto, Canada. I'm in Ontario. It's buggy here. If you open up your windows in the summertime at nighttime, your ceiling is black with bugs.
Ugh.
Like I wish that were an exaggeration, like horrible.
Yeah.
So I couldn't leave the house. So here I am in my 30s, very smart. I have a degree in psychology. I'm working successfully in animal health, and I can't leave my house some days because something might fly near me. So there's a lot of shame with that, and I couldn't. I talked to my psychologist about it. We did all the talk therapy about it, and ultimately it came down to, she's like, you really have two choices for help. You can either do exposure therapy or desensitization therapy. So we'll slowly, slowly, slowly expose you to the thing you're terrified of. And I'm like, not that one. What's the other option? And she's like, hypnosis. And I'm like,
Yeah, that doesn't work.
I don't believe in
It
that.
does work. Yeah, it does.
I'm like, that's dumb. I'd seen some stage
Yeah,
shows. My
yeah.
One of my cousins had like a hypnotist come to one of his parties, whatever. But I was desperate and I couldn't leave my house. Like literally, friends would come over in the summertime and they sit outside on the back deck with my husband, and I'd sit inside on a kitchen chair and talk to them through a screen.
Mm,
Right. So it was invasive. I couldn't hardware stores where they have the aisle with bug spray.
mm.
I couldn't even walk down the aisle.
Wow.
And those are pictures of bugs. So you feel really dumb, but
Yeah.
also petrified. So there's a lot of conflicting emotions. And so I decided to ask my chiropractor, who I just trusted a lot, and she always helped me. I'm like, do you happen to know someone who does hypnosis? Because my therapist is like, I don't know anyone. And she did, which was surprising. I always say the path finds you.
Mhm. That's
And
great.
I was desperate, so I went, and in one session, she nailed on the head what 13 years of therapy and a 4-year degree in psychology never came close to.
Whoa. What was that?
So she used a technique I now know, it's called the meta model, that was able to find out that the root of my problem, it wasn't that I didn't believe I wasn't thin enough or that I was ugly. All that was surface level. Deep down, I didn't believe that the core of who I am is lovable.
Mm.
And so I had to do all these other things to try to hide the fact that I deep, deep, deep down believed that I wasn't a lovable person, that there was
Mm.
that if my own mother and sister had a hard time loving me, which is what I believed at the time, due to family dynamics, And if they can't love me, if they can't find a way to love me, then I can't possibly be someone who is even lovable. It must just be me, not them.
Mm.
And I'd never heard about depression and anxiety and eating disorders talked about through that lens. And I did she's my coach looked at me, or the hypnotherapist who became my coach, she's like, "I can help you. If you work with me, I promise we can get this phobia gone. Just you have to do what I tell you to do and show up for your sessions." And I didn't believe her. And I thought it was a scam and all these things,
Yeah.
but I trusted my chiropractor, and Jacqueline vouched for this person, and I'm like, "All right, if she scrambles my brain, I'm coming back to you." And I we did the program. I did, I think, 6 months with her, and after 3 months, I was surprised when not only was the phobia gone, but those voices in my head that told me that I wasn't worthy, that I wasn't lovable, that I couldn't do it, that people hated me, they were gone too.
Mhm.
And they were replaced with voices like, "You've got this, you can do this." And I'm like, "How the hell did that work?" I mean, why is no one talking about this? How,
Yeah.
what? And so I was working in animal health. I have a background in working in veterinary hospitals and animal hospitals. Very happy in my job. I didn't expect to take this other path, but I was like, I need to know how that worked. So I did some trainings and to understand it, and became a hypnotherapist. Thought that was hilarious. Posted on Facebook saying, "Look at me, I'm a hypnotherapist now," because I thought it was funny. And a woman who I sang with came up to me after one of our rehearsals, and she's like, "I hear that you can do hypnosis." And I'm like, "I know, weird, right?" She's like, "Can you help me with a
Mm.
phobia?" And so I started working with her and found that these tools are actually quite elegant and quite simple. And so that kind of started me on the path to working with people one on one. I think when she swallowed her first pill, I was more excited than she was. It only took 3 sessions, by the way, to get her. She was 52, 52 years of having a phobia of swallowing pills,
Mm.
and in 3 sessions, gone.
Wow.
And I just found myself on this path, and I've worked with hundreds of clients over the years, and it always comes back at some point to boundaries. It really
Mhm.
does. And so my path then to get me here, once you once you find the actual wounds that's holding you back, when you stop looking at the surface stuff like, I'm fat, I need to lose weight. When I got down to, I need to heal this wound of unlovable, when I focused on that, it's actually a lot easier to work
Mm.
with. It's a
Mhm.
lot faster. And that's when I started to find hope. And that's why I now go out and tell
Mm.
people. I mean, I was told I would never get better, and yet here I am.
Yeah.
So everyone's capable of finding this healing. We're just often looking at the wrong tools, or we're using the tools the hard way. We're trying to change from the behavior from the outside in,
Mhm.
versus working. What I do with my clients is from the inside out. Let's get you knowing who you are at the core,
Mhm.
and then you can shake off all the other stuff more easily. So there's a
Mm.
lot of hope to be found. We're just not always looking in the right place, and unfortunately, it's still considered fringe.
Mhm.
So your doctor won't tell you about this. You won't hear this
Mm.
from a lot of people, which is why I'm like, I want to talk about this. I want people
Yeah.
to know there's hope. Yeah.
Yeah, how at the core we hear quite a bit these nowadays of people just want to be seen, loved, and heard.
Hmm.
And it's so true, but yet for some, the concept is so foreign. How do I love myself? How do I make, like I thought I was seen, but I'm not, or I am seen, but it's not the way I want to be seen, or I want to be loved. And it's such, like you said, it's on the fringe. It's not, you're not going to see it in mainstream science or medicine at that point. You mentioned boundaries.
Hmm.
Let's talk about boundaries. Let's talk about how you found that through your journey, you realized it was actually really about setting boundaries. So let's talk about that. Let's start with your definition of boundaries.
Sure. So boundaries are how to know where I am and where I am not. What is in my control, what is not in my control. So where do I end and others begin? But not just physically and not just abstractly, but where do I end physically? Okay, my body. Where do I end emotionally? What emotions are mine and what are the people's in my lives? Where is that line between my emotions and their emotions? My thoughts, where does my thoughts end and others begin? Where does my
Mm,
energy begin? Where does others begin? So boundaries are about knowing the difference between this is mine, this belongs to me, this is in my realm of control, and this is not mine, this does not belong to me. So boundaries are just about knowing where that edge is between me and not me, which means boundaries are a way to know me and how I am
mhm.
different from others, but then not to then use that as a way to stay separate, but to know who I am so I can then connect with others without losing myself while still being open to their influence so that I can be elevated by what they bring to the table too. So a lot of times boundaries, we think we're setting boundaries, but we're actually putting up walls, and walls are great for keeping us safe, but they don't allow things in. Boundaries are supposed to let things in as well as
Mm,
out.
mhm.
So boundaries are about knowing where I am, where I am not, what is in my control, what is not in my control, and where, which means that boundaries define your space and place in the universe. So
Mm,
when we don't have boundaries, we don't actually know where we are in the universe. We can't find us. And so we can talk a good game about being heard and seen and understood and all those things. But until I am seen by me, until I am heard by me, until I am known by me, having a conversation with someone else isn't going to get me where I want to go. So
mm.
boundaries are about knowing who I am in relationship to the rest of the world, what I'm responsible for, what I'm not, and how I can now use that as a conduit and connection to others.
Okay, so if how would one start to love themselves then or be seeing themselves? You talked about that internal, that internal recognition. So
Mhm.
if somebody doesn't love themselves, where would they start then?
I mean, the easy answer is find a coach who can help you because I
Yeah,
mean,
right.
it's the reason I have a coach. My life is my blind spot. We need
Right.
perspective.
Mhm.
So, one step is to find perspective, and you can find perspective in a book, you can find a perspective in a movie, you can find perspectives everywhere. But if the perspective you have isn't working for you, it's just one.
Mm,
It's just one perspective. And so find another perspective, whatever that may be, and then see if that perspective gets you closer to where you want to go or farther. If it gets you closer, stick with that perspective. If with that
mhm,
perspective you're like, man, that's cutting off other avenues, find a different one. There's infinite numbers of perspectives.
mhm.
So find a new perspective, however that works for you. I find it's faster to work with someone. That's why I just call my coach and I'm
Right.
like, I'm stuck in my own head. Help. But anything that allows you to look at the world differently, to see how you fit into it differently. A big part of why I wrote the book is to give people new perspectives, to
Mhm,
help them see how they fit into the world in a different angle. So I know myself through the lens of others, but I can't do that if I'm constantly being triggered by their behavior.
mhm.
So learning how, so I would say find new perspectives and also take responsibility for your perspective. Own it. Be okay
Mhm.
with it, and if you're not okay with it, change it.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah,
And as I was reading your book, that was the one thing that I was starting to take away. It's like, okay, there's things I can do for myself first in setting my boundaries. And you mentioned walls and boundaries. Could you dig a little bit more into the difference between them and maybe give an example? Somebody listening is like, what does a healthy boundary look like, and what does a wall look like, and being able to tell the difference between the two.
sure, yeah, great question. So, walls are permanent, they are immovable. So imagine if I were to build a wall around my room right now, that defines my space, and that is my space for now and evermore. It's hard to move a wall. Once I put up a wall, I'm protected from the elements, but I can't grow any more beyond that. So walls, or what I technically, it's a condition, if you want to get the technical term for it, which I talk about in my book. Conditions make it so that it breaks connection with others, but it keeps us safe. So if I build a fortress around myself, I'm safe, but I'm not open to influence from others. I can't collaborate with others. I can't ever grow beyond that one space. And walls need to be guarded, right? If I build, think about like a jail, if you build a wall around a prison, they don't just build a wall, they then build a wall and then they put barbed wire on top and then they have like armed guards. Like you have to put a lot of energy into making sure that wall stays there because it's immovable. There's no bend to it. There's been a lot of storms that have come through our world in the last few months, and the reason certain trees survive and others don't is some are able to bend and some are rigid against the wind. Walls are rigid. They are, you can't talk to me that way. I deserve more respect. These are valid truths, but they're rigid and so a little too much wind and they get uprooted.
Mm,
Boundaries are meant to be flexible. They are meant to be negotiable because someone else has boundaries too and they have needs and wants. And if I'm like, I want this, and you're like, I want this, and now we're on opposite teams. So boundaries are meant to be flexible, negotiable. Instead of saying, you can't talk to me like that, a boundary would be, I would love to be spoken to more gently, or I would love to be spoken to with more respect. That is an acknowledgement of my deep seated desire and need. That's all about me and expressing it in a way that you can understand it. Versus, you can't talk to me that way, which is a condition, which is a wall, which needs to be constantly guarded and or have to always be on alert for who's not
mm,
talking to me right. A lot of energy wrapped up in that. And it
mhm,
means we're constantly scanning the world for people who are trying to break down our walls, which means we're going to miss all the people who are trying to connect with us. So it skews our perception of reality and it gives us a perspective where we're unsafe unless we have deep fortress walls around us. So
mm.
it's a valid perspective, but a boundary is a perspective that lets us grow, that lets us move, that lets new people into our space and others out. It's meant to be a negotiable space.
You mentioned that walls make people feel safe. How can we dismantle those walls that are causing disconnection between us and others, but still maintain that safety that we crave by building up walls?
Yeah, boundaries. Boundaries are
Boundaries.
how we keep
Okay.
ourselves safe,
Okay.
right? So if someone's screaming at me, I'm like, ah, whatever. Hopefully they don't actually look like that because I'd be giggling. But let's say they're all like, rawr. If that's happening, I'm probably not going to be feeling safe.
Right.
So if I say, you can't talk to me that way, I'll feel safer. I'll feel empowered. I'll have spoken up. I'll have spoken my truth.
Mhm.
But now I'm going to put them on the defense. I've taken offense.
Mhm.
So now we're on opposite teams. We're not going to be in, we're not in a space for conflict resolution. We're not in a
Mhm.
space for negotiation and collaboration.
Mhm.
If I instead come into the conversation and I say, I appreciate that you're really upset right now, and I would love to be spoken to more gently, that allows the conversation to keep happening. It's just
Mm,
adding a parameter so that I can make sure that I'm safe in the conversation. So conditions
mm,
shut down the conversation. It's just like you either talk to me the way I want to be spoken to, or I'm not going to listen. That's a condition
mhm.
that breaks connection, that removes any opportunity for the conversation to continue. It really, you're done at that point. You're not even talking about the original problem. And a lot of us have had that experience.
Mhm.
You set a boundary and now you're arguing over that.
Mhm.
You're not even
Yeah.
talking about the original problem, so your needs are still not getting met, and now you probably hate each other's guts.
Mhm.
So that's how you stay safe. You use your words to create a space where you're able to allow someone else in without losing who you are.
Mhm. Mhm. When you work with clients and you talk to them about setting boundaries, what are some of the challenges that you see them encounter when they're trying to set with when they're trying to set boundaries with other people that might not know how to set boundaries? What's your advice to them?
So I teach them something called the boundaries blueprint, which I teach in the book. It's a three-step linguistic formula. And you don't have to, it doesn't matter who the other person is. It doesn't matter if you have zero confidence in yourself. It's literally a linguistic plug and play kind of formula. And when you use it, it works. It just does. So the formula is it's three steps. The first step is multiple choice. So you just got to pick one of these. You either say, I respect, I appreciate, I agree, or I love. Those are your only options. You'll notice I understand is not on the list.
Mm.
Because when you say to someone, I understand, their deep, 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 deep down thought is going to be, no, you don't. If you understood, you'd agree with me.
Ah.
Right? It breaks
Oh,
connection. No
yeah.
one, when you say I understand, you don't, no one ever feels understood.
Interesting.
It just doesn't, it's just ineffective. So I appreciate, I respect, I agree, or I love. And then pick something that you can actually appreciate or agree with, even if it's just, I appreciate that you're angry and yelling right now.
Mm.
Right? I agree that this is not a helpful conversation, whatever. Step two is to say the word and. That's it. That's that step. Nice and easy. Most of us go wrong. We'll say but. When you say but, whatever you said before it, the other person's mind is like, they were lying. So
Mm.
it makes it sound like you're pandering. So we want to
Yeah,
say and.
I've heard that before. Yeah.
Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. A lot of
Yeah.
people talked about the but, and linguistic, and I do go into that in the book, the linguistics of it, because I'm a word nerd. Step 3 of the formula and the boundaries blueprint is to say the words I would love and then share what it is you want without making it a command.
Mm,
So if I say I would love you to stop yelling at me, I'm trying to control someone else's behavior. It's a command.
mm,
Their behavior is outside of my realm of control. I can't change it even if I want to. They're allowed to yell. They're allowed to do all the things they're doing. So saying you can't talk to me is wrong. They can. They did. That's probably why you want to set a boundary. So
right.
you want to say I would love, and you want to share it in a way that makes it so that it's just a statement of your own desire and want without making it a command. So instead of
Mhm.
I would love you to stop yelling at me, you could say I would love to be spoken to at a lower volume and more gently.
Mm,
So now you're just stating what you want without bringing the other person into it at all. So when you do that, those 3 steps, you get a single sentence. So I appreciate you're really angry right now, and I would love to be spoken to more gently and with more respect. And then there's a fourth step. That's the magic fourth step that brings it all together. And that is, oops, hit my microphone. Once you say that single sentence, you have to be quiet. It's the hardest part. You have to literally just sit there. And I tell my clients to sing a song in your head. So to sing whatever song in your head, mine is from the 1990s cartoon Animaniacs. They have a song with all the countries of the world. So I just sing all the
yeah,
countries in the world in my head.
yeah.
Sing a song because the other person, you need to give their brain time. Because what happens is you'll say your boundary and then you're going to ramble on and you're going to tell them how you feel and explain why. Doesn't matter why you want what you want. They don't need to know that.
Mhm.
They don't need to know that. It's not that it's irrelevant. It's just that that's information for you, right? Part of boundaries is knowing that you don't have to share all that. I'm allowed to keep some things to myself, such as my reasons, right? So I'm going to say, I appreciate you're really angry. I would love to be spoken to more gently and with more respect. And then I'm going to be quiet and wait. And I like to tell the story about the time my mom waited 45 seconds before she talked. Ah, oh, it's agony. I got through my whole song.
It feels like it's
Oh my
forever. Yeah,
gosh, it
yeah.
does.
While you're telling this story, I was thinking I used to be a teacher, a high school math teacher, and in college, they would teach us that wait time. Ask a question. It sounded so simple, and I'm like, "Nah, this doesn't work," but it does. Ask the question and then count to 3. Do you know how long that count is to sit in silence? But what I came to realize and appreciate is that the other person needs time to process what it is that you just said. And if
Yeah.
you don't give them that processing time, then you're robbing them from the ability to actually synthesize and recognize and acknowledge what you just said.
There's a concept of there's a power in the pause.
Yeah.
And in that moment where you're silent, you are in your power, which is why it feels so gross and why we want to talk. And is that breaks and gives away our power because we want to go blam, barf onto the other
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
So in that moment of silence, that discomfort you're feeling is holding your power. And so it feels weird. And so that's why distract yourself with a song, whatever you need to
Yeah.
do, but let the
You,
other person talk first.
Yeah, your book does mention that about keeping your power inside and versus giving your power away. And that is one way that silence keeps that power inside. We don't realize how we are energy beings
Hmm.
and that we give off positive and negative energy. And actually, this is a good segue into what I want to ask you. In your book, you talk about love as energy.
Hmm.
And I want to read the following passage and then I want your comments on it because this really struck me. So, this is from the book. It's this quote: "When you rely on others to meet your emotional needs, you inadvertently place a heavy burden on them, which can leave them feeling depleted and overwhelmed, even if they don't realize why. Over time, instead of fostering mutual support and growth, the relationship can turn into a battleground for emotional survival." And beyond that, you go to talk about love being an energy. And then you ask the following question, quote, "How do we tap into this powerful energy of love without relying on other people?" And I thought that was fascinating because we say to other people, "I can't live without you. I love you," and stuff. But the way you define energy, love is an energy that starts from within. So
Mhm.
elaborate some more on that.
Sure, sure. Great question. So think about, have you ever gone to someone and you're like, oh, I just had such a hard day, and you like vent, and then you walk away and you feel great and you've got like renewed energy? Well, if you met up with them and you now have more energy, where did that energy, it came from somewhere, right? We usually go to our friends and our family to recharge. Like my friends will make me feel better. My family gives me all the love I need. So if they're giving me energy, what do you think's happening to their energy?
Being sucked out of them.
Being sucked out of them, right? It's an energy exchange, and we want it to flow, but oftentimes there's imbalances. Wouldn't it be nice, instead of going to my friends and family to find ways to fill up my soul and find ways to fill the void of love, if I showed up full and allowed what I have built in myself to leak out over to them, so that when we meet, they walk away and I walk away feeling better. Both of us can benefit from it. So we talk about how love is, the underlying vibration of the universe. If you want to get into like the wooey
Mhm.
sort of it, I talk about the science behind that in the book, and how no, love is actually critical for human survival. But we think that love has to come from other people. But if it's an infinite field of love, why can't I plug into it directly, fill myself up directly, and then show up more full for my friends and family? And it turns out we can. And the easiest way to fill up with love is to just do things that you love. It's really that simple.
So
Just do.
simple, right? That and your book says that too. Like just do those things that you love to do. And one of the exercises is to actually come up with that list for yourself. Do you know I had trouble doing that?
Yeah, a lot of people do. And I'm asking
Yeah.
for a list of 30, and I'll tell you that every one of my clients usually comes up with like 10 or 15, and that's
I
a
think I got
struggle.
12. I got
12,
12. Yeah,
nice.
I got
Nice.
that far. I was like, "Wow, this is really hard." But as I was doing it, I realized that I tend to give to others. Like my life, because I was a mom and I was wife, like my life, I thought I had to give, 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 give. And if I were to receive something, it would be selfish. And we're going to talk about being selfish in a minute because I want to go there too. But like love to me was equated as I had to give something.
Yeah.
I have to get something from somewhere. Love has to be outside of me. It doesn't start inside of me. And after reading your book, realizing, wait a minute, love is this energy when I do these things. And then I start focusing on some of these things I love to do. I was like, wow, yeah, that feels really good for me to do that. I'm loving myself. And then I found I'm showing up for others in love and I can give and receive that love. And a game changer. I mean, I was
Yeah.
just very, very I didn't I was very intrigued by the perspective and it worked, So
Yeah.
I thought, wow, this is really cool. I did mention the word selfish, and that was
Yeah.
another question I had because your book did talk about the art. There's a chapter titled "The Art of Being Selfish," and selfish is spelled SELF hyphen ISH. So I want you to define selfish and how it ties into how we love ourselves and how we love others.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So, yeah, it's self-ish is kind of the point. So, I'd like to talk about linguistics again,
Oh,
word
yeah,
nerd and all
absolutely.
that
I
stuff.
do too. I'm a
Okay.
word nerd too. I've totally believe like don't just tell me you're gonna try something. It's like, no, you either do it or you don't. There's no try in between. Yes, we could go on forever on that. Yes.
I know, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I love the linguistics too.
Awesome. So I break down the word. So if you look at the word selfish, it's two parts. It's the word self and then the suffix ish. So the word self is something I spend about 3 chapters helping people define, because when you ask, who am I? Well, there's different perspectives. There's the psychological perspective, the metaphysical perspective, philosophical. So I get into all that, but the self pretty much defines all of who you are on the physical layer of reality, emotional, mental, spiritual, your thoughts, beliefs, values, body, aspirations, everything that makes you you is yourself. The suffix ish, if you like go back to grammar school, is a suffix modifies the word that it's attached to, and it transforms how it behaves in a sentence. So the example I use in the book is like a accessory added. So if I put on a hat or a scarf, it changes my whole outfit. So a suffix, if you tack it onto a word, changes the meaning. So the suffix ish means more or less, it means somewhat. So if I say that my microphone is gray ish, you would know that it's gray, but it's not gray gray. It's something, there's other colors mixed into it. If I say that I'm tall ish, you know that I'm tall, but I'm not tall enough to be defined as just tall. So ish adds a little bit of wiggle room, it adds some flexibility. It means that something is a lot like the original word, but not entirely like the original word. So self ish means that I'm mostly about myself, but not entirely. I leave space to be able to collaborate with others, to be able to communicate with others. So it's not all about me. I need to take care of the world I'm in as well. But it's mostly about me. So I'm self ish. And that's the goal. That's the entire point of boundaries is to be mostly about yourself, but not entirely, because that's self only and that's pathological and toxic. So we don't want self only. We want self first. We want self ish.
What does it look like then to be self first? Because selfish, they're like, you don't want to be selfish. Don't be selfish. Put your family first. That's what I grew up with. So,
Yep.
what does it look like to be self first without being
Healthy.
selfish?
So no, so self first and selfish are the
Yours-
same things.
Oh,
That's
wait,
what
wait,
we
wait.
want.
Without being
Self only.
yeah, society's definition of selfish.
Oh, right. So
How do you put yourself first without falling prey to society's definition of selfish?
right. So when we talk about selfish in society, what we're really referring to is the concept of self only.
Okay.
That you're about yourself and only about yourself, and that's pathological. That's a problem. So that's how the word is used, but if you break it down linguistically, that's not what it actually is meant to mean. We've
Mhm.
just buggered it up a little bit in
Right,
society
right.
because, so what it looks like to be selfish is to, in any situation, consider your own needs first and then consider everyone else's needs. So self only is I consider my own needs. Done. Others first is I consider your needs and then I consider my own. Others only is I consider your needs, your needs, and I have no idea what I want,
Mhm.
which is what a lot of us do. A lot of us are taught that. That's
Right.
what motherhood is. That's what caring is. That's what love is. Excuse me, the Jerry Maguire kind of, you complete me. I'm not whole without you. I can't. No, I
Yeah.
like that whole thing. We're taught
Yeah.
that anything not that is wrong and is selfish and is bad. I want people to look at the word selfish differently. I want them to return it back to its grammatical roots and make it about so you're mostly about the self, you're about yourself first, but then you consider other people. So in a given situation, what do I want from this situation? So I want to be spoken to more respectfully. Cool. What does that person want? So one of the things I don't talk about it in the book because it would have been like 800 pages long. At some point, I'm like, all right, let's keep it a little shorter. I did have it at one point. I took it out. Excuse me. It is something I do talk about in my 8-day life mastery training that in every conversation, there's three perceptual positions. So there's three perspectives you can take. There's what we
Mm,
call position one, which is my perspective, where I know what I want out of the situation and my side of things. There's position two, which is the other person's perspective. What do they want? What do they need? Which sometimes we're afraid to ask that because we think that having boundaries means that I shouldn't care what they want. That's their problem.
mm,
But getting that perspective allows me to communicate more effectively. And then there's a position number three, and it's the eagle of wisdom. Actually, maybe I do talk about this in the book. I think I do. I think this is one of the activities. I think I did keep it in there. The third perspective is imagine that you're in the body of an eagle floating
mm,
above the dynamic. And from this perspective of wisdom, what can you notice in terms of patterns between the two people? What's the common thread? Because in every interaction, no matter how far apart you are in terms of your ideology and beliefs, there will always be a common thread at least. And so self-ish means being willing to navigate all three of those positions while knowing and holding on to your integrity of who you are. So in codependency or people who identify as empaths, they spend their whole life in position number two, what the other person wants and needs, which means their position is a blind spot. They don't know. Selfish, as society uses it, so self only is only knowing my position and not caring about the other one. Some people are, the spiritual ones are like, I will only see the overhead pattern, which is lovely, but you still don't know what you want.
Hmm.
So we're meant to be in all three positions so that we know multiple perspectives. And so weird segue. Years ago, I dated a guy who was in the Navy, and he taught me about triangulation, which is when navigating, as long as you have, and if anyone's official and knows this, I'm sorry if I'm butchering this, but if you have like 3 points of contact, you can navigate anywhere.
Yes.
So you have 3 points of contact, first position, second, and third, which means that from a perspective position, you can navigate anywhere. So we talked about how to get new perspectives. That's one way to get new perspectives. Explore new perspectives. And when you amalgamate all three and use all three in your communication and decision making, you're coming at it from a much different intention.
Hmm. I'm listening to the process going like, wow, this is a lot of work. I relate to the empath, right? Just being completely others focused first. Beside like, yes, boundaries is going to be the answer, but what's one practical thing somebody can do that's gonna help them n knock them out of this where you're only in one position, but to help them to see all 3 positions to triangulate and make a better conversation, better interactions with the people around them?
So in the moment, you're probably not going to be able to pull it off until you've practiced it a few times. So my biggest tip is to practice this not with the person in front of you.
Mm.
So we're really good. We have this wonderful tool called an imagination, and we use it to scare the hell out of ourselves and pressure ourselves. And that's not what it's meant for. It has much bigger applications. So use your imagination to explore a conversation, either one that's already happened or one that you're anticipating before you go into it. So in the moment, I'm probably not going to be like, hold on, my perspective, their perspective. Like it's going to be tough. So practice
Yeah.
these tools when you're not in front of another person. Practice them in your journal, practice them in your own time. If you had like a conversation, you're like, well, that didn't go well, then go to your journal and be like, okay, what did I want? In the training that I run, we actually teach it as a technique. And what we do is we have 3 different points on the floor. So we put what X marks the spots. We put like a marker on this side of the room, we put a pencil on that side, and then we have a chair that you can kneel on for the eagle of wisdom. And we actually ask people to walk each step. So standing
Mm.
by the marker and then looking across and imagining whoever you're in a conversation with, imagine them there. From your perspective, looking at them, what do you notice? And you're like, they're a prick and I hate their guts and they're being annoying, blah, 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 whatever. Cool, all valid. Beautiful. Now go into their position. So actually walk across the room to where the pencil is, stand and look back at yourself. So
Mhm.
in their body, embodied in them for a moment, what do you see? I see someone who's trying really hard to be strong but doesn't know what to do about it. Now, is this real? It's all hallucinations, but again, we're
Right.
imagining. Use your imagination for good. It's such a good tool. Once you've done that, you then walk to the chair and you kneel on it safely, and you now can look down on your pencil and your marker, and you can say, okay, from this perspective of wisdom, what do I notice? And I can be like, neither one's talking to each other. They're both stuck in their own head. And then once you've done that, you go back into your own position. You always have to end in your own position. So anyone who's an empath, I would
Oh.
tell them, always end in your own position.
Hmm.
Walk around, explore. It's great to know what the other person's position is. Always, always end back in your own.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's I think because
Wow.
that's where the wisdom comes back to you. And now from your own perspective, what's different for you? So explore other people, explore all perspectives, know your own as well,
Wow. Okay. That's cool.
and boundaries.
And boundaries.
And boundaries.
And set your
I
boundaries too,
everything that's why I wrote the book,
yeah,
everything
well,
comes back.
we're all about small steps, big wins here,
Yeah.
so there's but I think that's really cool. I never thought of the 3 different perspectives to a conversation.
Hmm.
There's my and the eagle view.
Yeah,
I
the
just think that's
observer.
yeah, the I think that's just so cool. You mentioned, and I mentioned it at the very, very beginning, that for a long time you felt being stuck in the shadows of life. So I want to ask you, what's one thing that you thought would be hard about being stuck there? What was hard about being stuck there, but really turns out it wasn't? And what was one thing that you thought would be easier to get unstuck, but really was more challenging for you?
Okay, so what was hard about being in the shadows was not finding hope from people who said that they were in the light.
Mm,
That was hard because I believe that darkness always has light. There's always a balance point, and so that's what kind of kept me looking. There was always a tiny spark of hope, and it was hard to be in the shadows and know that light must exist, but not see it anywhere around me,
mhm,
and not have anyone tell me that it was even possible for me. So that was hard. The easier part, finding the light, was so much easier once I started looking in better places. I was looking outside for light,
mm,
and life changed when I looked inside for light. When I stopped caring about how other people were treating me and instead looked inside for how was I treating myself and what did I know about myself. And once you start looking in the right spot, it becomes a lot easier. And I was like, because a phobia that had plagued me for years, eating disorders, depression, all that 3 months, gone,
mhm,
like gone, never to be heard from again. So much easier than I'd been led to believe. So much easier. I was just looking in the wrong spot.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, I found that too in writing my book as well. And you and I, while we were talking off camera, we share a lot of the same common things, the eating disorders, the suicidal ideation, everything. And I found part of your story resonating with me. It took me a while before I found what it was that brought healing to my soul. So our paths were a little different. And I guess what I really want to point out too is that what works for you might not work for me. What worked for me might not work for you. But the beauty of your book is that there are so many different types of tools within it that there is something that will resonate with somebody. And I don't want to turn the podcast into one big plug for your book, but I really want people to
I
know.
don't mind.
No, I know you don't mind, but see, the thing is, I really want people to know who are listening, like there is hope out there. And I want them to hear that from your story as well. You took a number of steps. You just kept looking and looking and looking. So out of your story, the common thread is you didn't give up and there was hope out there somewhere. So, like I said, when I started reading your book, I'm like, oh my God, there's like so much stuff in here. So I'm so excited to bring this to my listeners, to bring it to the world, to let somebody know that, hey, if you've tried everything and you think there's nothing that's going to work, here's something else that might help you change what's happening to you or change your perspective on what's happening to you. So,
100%. And I'm going to make a bold statement and say that I promise that anyone who reads the book and follows all the steps in the book will find new perspectives on themselves, will find deeper healings, and will find newer ways of connecting with others, hands down, period.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. I felt that too. I mean, I have to go back to it and finish my homework because, like I said, I didn't have enough time. So, Jen, I really appreciate, I mean, we could just talk for like a long time here, but all great conversations do have to come to an end. So I always end my podcast with the core three questions. So I will start those. So the first is, would you please share a book or resource that's had a significant impact on you and how or why it's done that?
Sure. So the book that had, there's a lot over the years, but the one that had the biggest impact is called The Surrendered Wife by Laura Doyle. My coach, when she had me read it, told me that she wanted me to read it because it'll tick me off. It is at its heart a book about boundaries with self.
Mm,
And I found that book when my marriage was not in a good place at all. And we were on the brink of not being together. And how can I show up differently? And that book gave me actual tools that started me on that path and
mm,
changed. It taught me a side of being in a relationship that was so counterintuitive to what I'd been
mm.
taught. And when I did what she told me to do in the book, I noticed massive changes. So I still recommend
Wow.
that book to people. You either love it or you hate it. Most people are like, ah, but if you can separate your instinctual reaction to it and actually do the 6 core intimacy skills that she talks about, if you can kind of boil that out of it,
Mhm.
it's a game changer. So
Wow.
that book was fantastic for me.
Oh,
Yeah.
great, great. The second one, you can take it wherever you want it to go, and it's fine by me. So it's what is one question or topic you wish I would have asked about, and how would you have answered that question or expanded on the topic?
Mm. So I think when I typed this out earlier, I talked about my
Uh,
8-day life mastery program, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
and we touched on that
we
too.
touched on that. So
Yeah,
I mean, I think we talked about that. I think we had a great conversation. So I'm not sure that something
yeah.
didn't come
That's
out.
okay. Yeah,
I
that's
guess the one thing maybe, which I think I is probably one of the other questions, is hula hoop dancing. I'm a hula hoop dancer, and I never
oh
get to
wow.
talk about hooping. But if you come to my retreats, I'll teach you how to hula hoop and why it's so cool.
Oh, okay. I'll leave that one for people to reach out to you on to find out the answer on why hula hooping is so cool.
It's
That's
honestly
cool.
so really fast. It creates sacred geometry shapes around your body and spins
Ah,
energy and creates vortexes. And
interesting.
you can't feel sad when you're spinning in a hoop. And anyone can learn how to because there's off body and on body hooping, and it's solar plexus chakra, it's joy, it's all good
Oh
things.
my gosh.
Yeah,
Wow, I
so
never
many
thought about
things.
that.
So many things about hula hooping. I could do a whole talk on hula
Oh
hooping,
my
but yeah,
gosh.
like I said, come to my
That's
retreat and
great.
I'll teach you all about hula hooping and why it's such a magical thing.
Oh, wow, okay. I'm off to Five Below just to get a hula hoop.
Yes.
This should be great. As we close, this is my favorite question. As we close, what is one small step that someone can do today that's gonna help them change their tomorrow?
I mean, the selfish answer is go buy my book.
Well, I was gonna
Um,
say that too.
that's easy.
That'd
I
be fun.
think one thing I always like to tell people to decide you want it more than you're afraid of it. It's okay to be terrified of the journey. It's okay to feel squirmy, icky, gross about boundaries. And it's okay to feel that and still step forward anyways. That you don't have to wait to feel good. In fact, it can't feel good until you start taking the steps. So decide you want it more than you're afraid of it. And
Mm,
that one decision will open up doors that you didn't even think were possible.
great, thank you. Jen, how can people find you?
So they can find me by my website. So my website is btgwellness.com. So BTG stands for Bridge the Gap. So btgwellness.com. You can find all the information there about my private coaching, about my courses. I have some online courses that you can take, live ones. Um, I am on Instagram, but not a lot. And I'm on Facebook, but not a lot because I like conversations. So if people want to hang out with me, I do have a private group on Facebook. It's called the Live Life Unbroken Collective. And that's where all the fun stuff happens. That's where I hang out and I post stuff and we run challenges and we talk about like what questions came up in the book and all sorts of fun stuff. So if people want to get to know me a bit better before they dive in, come hang out with me there. And if you read the book and have questions, post it, like all the things.
Oh, great. Well, thank you. Jen, thanks. This has been quite a spirited conversation. I have really enjoyed it. So thank you
Same.
for the gift of your time. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I value your time with me and I seek to make every moment count. In order to make lasting change in your life, listening is usually not enough. So I want to ask you, what practical steps are you going to put into action today as a result of listening to this podcast? Remember, any step, any action, no matter how small, starts your journey to a big win. And if you're not sure where to get started, reach out to me and let's have a conversation. Until next time, love yourself, then love others. Peace.